I'm a nasty woman because I believe I should feel safe in my body.
I'm a nasty woman because I define myself and I refuse to fit into any definition provided by society.
I'm a nasty woman because I'm done having my own experience explained to me.
I'm a nasty woman because I believe that if we're going to have conversations about empowering women, we can't leave out everything that we've been taught is inappropriate.
I'm a nasty woman because I want to see more women in leadership.
I'm a nasty woman because I believe that every woman's voice matters, and we've dedicated our careers to empowering those voices.
Yes. So, hi, I'm Erin Brown,
I'm Neghar
and
and
this is the first episode of Nasty Women Radio. I had someone ask me just the other day what it meant to me that we were calling the show Nasty Women Radio, and I thought that would be an important thing to start with. So there was an iconic moment in the last presidential election when Hillary Clinton was trying to speak and Donald Trump interrupted her speaking by saying that she was a nasty woman. For us, this is less about being for Hillary and against Trump or any political beliefs and more about the feeling of watching that moment and feeling the universal experience of being a woman who is being told to shut up because she's a woman, and in this case, a nasty woman, because she was saying something that she meant with conviction. And so this is not necessarily a show about politics, and it's not a show about politics because the personal is political, but more about being two women who are going to unapologetically speak about issues that matter to them with conviction, even if that makes us nasty women.
Absolutely. When I saw that moment during the presidential debates, the overall feeling for me was we are living in a world where even a woman who has dedicated her life to leadership and has proven whether or not you believe with believe in Hillary's politics or agree with her or even like her, you do have to respect the fact that she has worked very hard to get to where she is, and even a woman of that standing can be told to sit down, shut up, and play small. And I think that that was why this term "nasty woman" has really taken off the way that it has, and why so many women have become self-proclaimed nasty women and are proud to say that, because I think that collectively we are done with being told what we can and can't do, being told what bubbles we're allowed to fit into, what spaces we're allowed to occupy. And so I think that in a way, the reason why this is so powerful is because it was a very negative statement, a very critical statement that women have decidedly taken on as their own and used it to empower themselves. And to me, that's been an amazing thing to see happen.
Absolutely, because,
Yeah.
especially within the context of a debate where theoretically they're talking about issues, and I've certainly had this happen in my own life, the cutoff point is something about being a woman, whether that's being called a bitch or having your tone policed, so you can't speak about it like that, or whatever it is. It's not talking about an issue, it's saying woman hush. And to me, the
Exactly.
only way to avoid that sentiment in our present day is to not say anything like you mean it, to always come from a position of not rocking the boat and silent complacency about every issue. And I don't think, can afford to live that way anymore. There's too much on the line, regardless of your belief system. There's too much on the line right now for us to keep being quiet because that's what we were taught.
Absolutely. And, with that being said, Erin and I wanted to have these conversations and do this podcast and do Nasty Women Radio because we want to have these more difficult conversations and create a safe space to have these controversial conversations, topics covered that we've been taught are things that we're not allowed to talk about, things that maybe are gross to talk about, things that, if you've ever used the phrase TMI, which stands for too much information, if you've ever used that phrase to preface a conversation about your period or about your reproductive organs or about your sex life. These are conversations that we want to really normalize, and we want to help our listeners normalize within their family and friend circles and their communities. And we really want to help empower women to feel as though these conversations are conversations that they're comfortable having, even if we've been taught that these are uncomfortable topics.
Right. That's a perfect example. Like the idea that periods, which is something that most of us have once a month for a big portion of our lives, and is not just like some ailment that we have, but something that is a part of our reproductive system. It's part of how we bring life into the world should we choose to. This is, in that way, a part of everyone's life, that we're not supposed to talk about that because it's dirty or gross, or we should be ashamed of it when it's really our body functioning properly. It's a perfect example of a conversation that is just long overdue. In fact, I'm pissed off all the time when I learn something new about my period, because I'm just like, I've been at this period thing for 20 years, and to just now learn something about where I'm at in my cycle and what that means about my fertility, or something that I thought was wrong with me that's really normal for a lot of women. There's so much I'm learning all the time that should have been basic information to me in health class for everyone. There's no reason that this should be an uncomfortable conversation amongst men. No, I don't sit around and talk to my husband about my period all the time, because there's lots of topics to discuss that aren't that. But in my household, it's certainly not shameful or something that we just can't. Oh, no, keep the tampons like in the hall closet and hide them, or whatever it is.
Well, and I think that that's really what we're trying to do here is, we've been taught, not just as women, I'm sure that this can span across all gender identifications, but we're speaking of it from, women who identify as women, from our own experience. And so you're going to hear us use that term a lot because we are women, and that is our area where we feel like we can speak on it. So as a woman in 2017, talking about things that historically have been deemed as shameful for women, for a woman to stand up and confidently talk about her sexuality, for a woman to have an opinion that would be considered otherwise polarizing. This is the kind of conversation that we want to have as women to help women get out of shame, because shame can only survive secrecy and silence. And if we're having the conversation and we're empowering you to have these conversations, then we are little by little eroding that bubble of shame that has surrounded women as a whole for so long.
So just briefly, maybe we should throw out some of the topics that we intend to cover.
Yeah.
Periods.
Definitely periods. I feel like it's the thing that's been really difficult is for Erin and I to not record every episode about periods. That I feel like it's probably going to make its way into a lot of conversations. Yeah. Regardless of whether or not the episode is about periods.
I mean, we're always somewhere in our cycle, so I mean,
we are.
It's relevant.
So we will be talking a lot about that. If you have that friend who always wants to talk about her period, that's Erin and I. So get comfortable with that. We're going to be talking about a lot of sexual health issues, including preferences and just sort of experiences with sexuality, as well as ways to stay healthy and to feel comfortable talking about sex, really. I mean, we're not going to be telling you about where to go get tested necessarily, or maybe we are. But the idea is to get comfortable talking about sex and not feel like it's something shameful.
We're going to talk about sexual violence and violence against women and how that means we show up in the world.
Mm-hmm. And we will be discussing trauma of all varieties, how to support someone who has experienced trauma and how to heal from your own trauma, as well as mental health issues, which are very prominent in today's world and something that we really want to be able to talk about without shame. If you're someone who's experienced anxiety or depression, bipolar disorder, or different mental health issues, we want you to feel like you can talk about those things without feeling ashamed of them.
Which is also an interesting experience specific to being female, because if you have any sort of mental health issue, then the way that at least that's been treated with me is that I'm just being an over-emotional woman, or Absolutely. I'm being oversensitive. So talking about what it actually means to have issues with your mental health and how to navigate them, as well as lots and lots and lots of talk about self-care. We're both moms, and I know that for lots of people, and for specifically women, and even more specifically mothers, but all kinds of people struggle with this. There's a lot of guilt and shame around any time, care, attention, energy given to yourself. And I think especially as we move forward into positions where we feel more confident as leaders, we need to also know how important it is to take time aside to care for ourselves. So we're going to talk a lot about how we do that and its importance in our lives.
Absolutely. There will be some episodes that have to do with parenting. So if you're a parent as well in any capacity, we will be talking about that. And primarily just anything and everything that affects today's woman, and how we can navigate those issues to have more impactful conversations, more empowered conversations, and feel as though we have powerful spaces that we can occupy in today's world.
Yes. So I guess that's where the one of the most important things to me that we're hoping to do is to get people a little bit out of their bubbles. I know that you and I are both pretty fearless in terms of subject matter we feel comfortable talking about. You don't have to broadcast all the information about your period on the internet or even agree with our points of view. To get something from listening to women talk frankly about difficult topics, and also hopefully learn a little something about healthy dialogue. We intend to have guests on the show, and there will probably be times that Neghar and I disagree with one another. And I don't think that in a public way, particularly in a social media way, we know how to do that thoughtfully. And so this is never going to be about speaking over one another or telling one another what to think, but more about how to have important conversations where you get to say what you mean while respecting another person. And so
Absolutely.
especially as we have guests on who have different points of view than us, we hope to have those conversations in a way that makes everybody feel most comfortable sharing what they think.
Absolutely. We're also going to be sharing a lot of personal stories. So you're going to get to know Erin and I very well if you are not already familiar with our work. You will become very familiar with it. Just a little bit about me personally and how I got here, and how Nasty Women Radio was a natural transition for me as a creator. And as a thought leader. I started out in the fitness industry, and I've been in the fitness industry for 16, going on 17 years now, and was always really passionate about helping women get into strength training and get into the gym and feel comfortable in the gym and feel like they can occupy that space without being judged or without being intimidated. And for a long time, the conversation for me with my clients, with my blog, with every thing that I created was about empowering women through strength. And eventually that conversation evolved as I evolved as a coach, and started to realize that if we weren't talking about mindset issues, then we weren't having the full conversation. If we weren't talking about body image issues and about body positivity and what it means to love yourself as a woman in today's world, then we're not having a full conversation. And so over the past several years, the work that I've put into the world has been with a fitness foundation, because I think that movement in any variety is really important for a woman, to feel as though she knows her body, to feel at home in her body, and quite frankly, to manage all of the emotional issues that we face today, because if we're moving our bodies, then we're caring for our bodies, right? So it's not really a conversation for me anymore about exactly what you need to be doing, rather that moving on a regular basis is a form of self-care. And so my message has kind of evolved in that sense. And in the last few years has really turned more towards these difficult conversations. When I would start having conversations with friends about how they would hide their tampons, going to a bathroom, or, didn't feel comfortable talking about sex, or I like to make people really uncomfortable by bringing up anal sex. That's like something that it's like a hobby for me. And recognizing how many women are really uncomfortable even talking about it and saying like, oh, that's not where it goes, because that's what we've been taught to have sort of shame around certain sexual acts. So I started having more of these conversations with my friends, no judgment at all, just an observation of how a lot of these conversations were very uncomfortable. And I started to think to myself, and then had these conversations with Erin, that if we're talking about empowering women through strength, if we're talking about mindset and body image, and we're talking about all these things, the conversation is incomplete without having these other conversations that have put in this little box of TMI and uncomfortable and inappropriate and shameful. And for me, that's why being a nasty woman and hosting Nasty Women Radio is such a natural transition for me as a woman and a leader, because we've done this fitness conversation, we've done this mindset conversation, this body image conversation, the conversations about guilt and shame. And so it's really sort of a natural progression into, well, now here we are. And here's this Pandora's box full of all these, icky conversations that we're not supposed to have. Can we fully come into our being as women if we're going to keep those conversations in a box? And so that's why this project is especially important to me.
Perfect. My journey is similar and very different. So I fell into fitness on accident, which is where we then came together, because I was trying to figure out how to live in my body in a way that was peaceful and powerful at once. That all started for me when I found out I was having my baby girl and realized that all I had to teach her about how to be a woman was to hate herself. And so I started working on the way I talked to myself and then how I treated myself, which eventually led me to the gym and strength training, where I've had so many uncomfortable, really terrible conversations with people about my body and what I should and shouldn't be doing there. And that led to most of my work being about body image, talking to women about how they feel in their bodies. Beyond just, I think my thighs are weird, but talking about trauma, and specifically, in my experience, sexual trauma, and how that means you show up in your body or don't show up in your body at all. How we disassociate from our body and then can't figure out why a gym routine is difficult for us when we aren't even present in our skin. So having a conversation about body image for me has transitioned into a bigger conversation about leadership, that I really want women to feel comfortable in their skin and in their voices, because those are things that keep us from leading. If you can't get up in front of a room because you're afraid that you're not pretty enough to stand there, then that's keeping us from leading. If you are terrified to say something because somebody's going to knock you down and call you a nasty woman, then that keeps us from speaking. So anything that keeps us from the forefront of conversations, particularly when they are about us, is a problem. And so that's my interest in hosting this talk show, but also, is it a talk show now? It just became a talk show.
I want it to be a talk show.
It's a talk show. I want some Sally Jesse glasses.
I do. I'm into it.
Of hosting this podcast, because now we can have things that I really do feel like are conversations. If we tried to write a definitive piece about masturbation, we would miss something. Whereas role modeling a conversation about it leaves it more open and hopefully leads more women to have whatever conversations they need to have that are keeping them from saying what they mean, from sticking up for people when they know that's the right thing to do, from stepping into leadership positions when the people who are leading them aren't doing it well, instead of staying back and second guessing everything about ourselves, which is what we're taught to do. So we want to see you leading. We want to see you talking. We want to see you disagree with us. That's fine too. But we want you having important conversations so that you can live by your own values and hopefully step into the leadership positions that we know we need to be in now.
Absolutely. There are a lot of topics that Erin and I are going to discuss, and we're going to share our personal opinions on them. And we don't expect or even want you to agree with our opinions. We just want you to have the conversation. So you might listen to certain episodes and be excited about the subject matter, but not necessarily in agreement with our opinions on the subject matter. And we just want you to know that that's not only okay, but completely encouraged, because you are your own autonomous individual and we want you to have your own opinions. We just want you to feel comfortable and empowered to have the conversation in the first place. And that's really why we're here. We're not here to share our opinions as facts or to place sort of our ideas over another. And one conversation that we do have with a lot of people when it comes to this idea of nasty women radio is this concept of modesty. Modesty for a lot of women is considered virtuous. And if you consider yourself a modest person and you have beliefs that certain things should be kept private, we respect that. We totally respect that. We're not here to debate modesty. We're here to eliminate shame. So there's a very big difference, in my opinion, and I think Erin probably shares this opinion as well, between not talking about subjects or, keeping certain things private because you're private or you value modesty, which is wonderful, and not talking about certain things because there's shame around them. So I think it's important to make that distinction between the two.
Absolutely.
We just want to create an environment where we can have open, honest, respectful, sometimes hilarious conversations about topics that women have been historically told to shut up and be quiet about. So, that's really what we're here for. And we hope that you are inspired by some of the things that we talk about to have your own conversations and to lead in your community.
And find your own voice, even if that's like, that Erin Brown, here are the 18 ways she's wrong. Well, great. Find that voice. And my preference, not just for me, but in general, is as opposed to argue with me about it, go create something that's what you want to see. Because we need more of us talking, not just about the things that Neghar and I agree about. We need more of us leading and more of us putting our voices out. So if you hate everything that we have to say, wonderful. Go make something. Seriously. Make some stuff. I will listen, and maybe I will evolve in my point of view as well. But we need more of us talking.
Absolutely. So if you love what we have to say, we'd love it if you shared it with the people in your life. And if you hate what we have to say, you can share it too. So that's completely acceptable.
So stay tuned for our bi-weekly conversations about lots of periods and all things that affect women in leadership today. So we are so excited to kick this off with you and can't wait for your feedback.
Welcome to Nasty Women Radio.